You get the order every time Trump wants someone prosecuted, just like a pizza delivery. That was Jamie Raskin speaking. Those words were aimed directly at the Attorney General of the United States, in front of cameras, in a congressional hearing room full of people. But that wasn't even close to the most damaging thing Raskin said. What came next was larger than any single prosecution, larger than any partisan battle. He laid bare the biggest financial claim a sitting president has ever made against his own government. $10 billion, not demanded from a foreign nation, not extracted from a private company, taken from American taxpayers, routed through his own Justice Department, evaluated by his own hand-picked appointees. And the moment Raskin asked the Attorney General whether this would breach the Constitution, she fell apart. Stay with this video because what Raskin uncovered, where that money would actually come from and who would sign off on it, is something every American deserves to know. If you're just finding this channel, hit subscribe right now. This is the biggest financial scandal that almost no one is discussing. Let's start with the raw numbers. Trump is filing a $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS. Read that again. $10 billion. For context, the IRS operates on an annual budget of around $12.3 billion. That means Trump is demanding roughly 80% of the entire agency's yearly funding. One lawsuit, one individual, 8 out of every $10 the agency spends in a year. The stated reason? A private contractor named Charles Littlejohn leaked Trump's tax records. Littlejohn was identified, arrested, and put on trial. He is currently behind bars, serving out his sentence. The system worked. The violation was punished, yet Trump is still pursuing $10 billion. Here is where Raskin's exposure becomes truly unprecedented. Federal lawsuits against the government are handled by the Department of Justice, which decides whether to contest them or settle. The Attorney General leads the DOJ. That Attorney General was chosen by the President. The President is Trump. Connect the dots. Trump initiates the lawsuit. His own appointees determine whether it gets paid out or fought in court. His Attorney General manages the entire process. His subordinates sit at the negotiating table. Trump himself said it openly. It's interesting because I'm the one that makes the deal. I kind of have to work it out with myself. Raskin turned directly to the Constitution. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7, the Domestic Emoluments Clause. It states that during his term, the president may not receive any emolument from the United States beyond his official salary. Put simply, he gets paid his wage, nothing additional from the federal government, no bonuses, no settlement checks, no $10 billion transfers from agencies he controls. Raskin put the question to Bondi plainly. Would a $10 billion payment to the president from his own government violate that clause? Her answer, I'm not going to discuss pending litigation. Take a moment with that. If you've stayed this far, hit like on this video, because what Raskin laid out next is something Bondi had no way to escape. Trump has been using the DOJ as a personal instrument while simultaneously trying to pull billions out of it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should any president have the ability to sue his own government for $10 billion while his own people control the outcome? I genuinely want to hear what you think. The $10 billion lawsuit doesn't exist in a vacuum. Raskin presented the full pattern. Trump has transformed the Justice Department into what Raskin described as a personal revenge machine. The targets have been clear. Former FBI Director James Comey, prosecuted. Case dismissed by the courts. New York Attorney General Letitia James, prosecuted. Case dismissed by the courts. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, currently under investigation. 6 Democratic lawmakers who recorded a video advising military personnel not to follow unlawful orders. A grand jury declined to indict them. One failed case after another. All of them launched against Trump's perceived opponents. All of them funded by the American public. While the DOJ spent its energy pursuing those targets, something else was unfolding. Epstein survivors had their identities exposed, phone numbers released, home addresses published in official federal documents. One survivor was named 538 separate times. Death threats came next. Raskin made a comparison that stopped the room cold. If Trump is seeking $10 billion over the humiliation of leaked tax returns, what compensation would these survivors deserve for a far more serious breach, one that put their lives at genuine risk? Bondi had no answer. She wouldn't even turn her chair around to face the survivors seated directly behind her. When a lawmaker asked her to apologize to them, Bondi dismissed it as theatrics. When those same survivors were asked whether the DOJ or Bondi had ever reached out to meet with them, every single hand in the room went up. Not one of them had received any contact. Then Raskin introduced another layer. He accused the DOJ of conducting surveillance on members of Congress, legislators who traveled to a DOJ facility to review less redacted Epstein documents, had their search histories quietly recorded. During the hearing, a photograph captured Bondi holding an open binder turned to a page that displayed a specific Democratic Congresswoman's individual search activity. The DOJ had been watching which documents elected officials were choosing to examine. Raskin labeled it congressional surveillance and formally called on the Inspector General to open an investigation. This is the complete picture Raskin assembled: a president suing his own government for $10 billion, an attorney general who refuses to say whether that's constitutional, a DOJ launching prosecution after prosecution against political enemies, with courts repeatedly throwing those cases out, a DOJ that exposed survivor information 538 times over, a DOJ that tracked the reading habits of sitting lawmakers, and when confronted with every single one of these facts, the Attorney General's reaction was to call Raskin a washed-up loser lawyer. "You're not even a lawyer," Bondi said directly to camera. The man she said that to taught constitutional law at American University for 25 years. His response on CNN was precise. "I'm not a washed-up lawyer. I'm a washed-up law professor." The personal attacks didn't stop with Raskin. Bondi went after nearly every Democrat who dared to question her. One was accused of Trump derangement syndrome. Another was dismissed as a failed politician. A third was told Bondi refused to get in the gutter with her. And then came the moment that stunned even the Republicans in the room. She turned on GOP Congressman Thomas Massie, who had pressed her specifically on Epstein redactions. Massie was one of the co-authors of the legislation that compelled the DOJ to release those files in the first place. Bondi called him a failed politician suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, a Republican, for asking questions about Epstein. Here is what Raskin put on the record. The numbers: a $10 billion claim against his own government, representing 80% of the IRS annual budget, plus a separate $230 million lawsuit tied to Mar-a-Lago, bringing total claims against taxpayers past $10 billion. The pattern: prosecution requests treated like delivery orders, aimed at political enemies, rejected repeatedly by courts and grand juries. The victims: a survivor named 538 times, death threats received, 0 meetings with the DOJ, 0 apology from Bondi. The surveillance: congressional search records monitored, Bondi photographed holding the evidence in plain sight. The response: personal insults directed at both Democrats and Republicans, and a flat refusal to answer constitutional questions. If you made it through this video, share it. This Attorney General will not confirm whether a $10 billion payment to the president from his own government would be constitutional. She dismissed the suffering of survivors as theater. She was photographed tracking the reading activity of lawmakers. Subscribe, because every development in the $10 billion lawsuit and the Epstein investigation will be covered here. When a sitting president sues his own government for $10 billion and his own attorney general won't say if that breaks the Constitution, this isn't a political dispute. It's a constitutional emergency. And when the person at the center of it attacks anyone who raises the question, from both parties, that response alone tells you everything. Draw your own conclusions.